Hello, my name is Ethan Serrano, and I will be presenting about working as a patient transport or floater volunteer at UCLA Hospital. And at the end of the presentation, I'll be giving a little talk about my personal experience working there and my thoughts on the job overall. Now, first, we'll be talking about the uniform. Now, the uniform, it's a basic thing. It's a little thing, but it's still good to mention if you're interested in, just to give you a little heads up about what you should have before you go volunteer. Now, it consists of a white collar uniform, so white polo shirt that'll work. Light brown sorry, khakis. I recommend light brown khakis and white shoes, which if you're going to be doing patient transport, then I suggest getting walking shoes or something that to you feels comfortable because you're going to be walking around the hospital. You'll be going up different floors and you'll be moving stuff around and or you'll be transporting a patient. And if you don't have shoes that feel comfortable, then if you're working for like 7 hours or 4 hours, it's going to be very uncomfortable and you're not really going to like it. So it won't be a very nice 4 hours. Um, there's also your volunteer ID that you get issued to you when you, it should usually be like a week after. Now, your volunteer ID is important because it is what allows you to use the elevators. Now, in patient transport, like down at the patient transport office, which is at the parking lot level, in order to access the office, you need an ID and it's a scan ID. So as long as you have the ID, you'll be able to access there. In order to access the elevators to get to different floors quicker, or yeah, different floors quicker, you need your ID in order to access the elevator. Without it, it's very hard to work, and you'll end up just shadowing someone, which is basically you just assist them whenever they need help or whenever someone goes out on a call. Usually, you just ask them, "Hey, I don't have my badge," or "Hey, can I just shadow you?" And they'll usually either say yes or no. It doesn't say on the presentation, but the last part of your uniform is the UCLA Health Volunteer Services jacket. I have mine here with me because I did include it, and I thought it'd be a little bit more fun just to show it on camera. But it's just the basic little coat blazer mix, and it's important because it helps distinguish or not distinguish, but deteriorate, not deteriorate. It helps show who's a volunteer and who's not. Like if there's an actual nurse or doctor around, we have that, and that, shows people that we're volunteering. They do not provide you this. They don't give you one at the job. You usually have to go buy one at the UCLA store or down in West, I think, down in I have to go buy one at the UCLA store, medical store. Next is what does patient transport do, or what do patient transport do? Now, patient transport usually it it's kind of in the name. You basically, well, it's definitely in the name. You basically just go up to different floors depending on where it is. You'll have a pager, and the pager will tell you who you're transporting. And you always take a wheelchair with you and a dolly if you need one to like carry people's bags because you also have to transport that as well. You go to different floors, you go to your assigned room, and you escort your patient from their room to wherever they need to go. So if they're doing a room transfer and you need to take them to a different room, like let's say you're on the fifth floor and you need to take them down to the fourth floor to the new room, you would go up to the fifth floor with a wheelchair and a dolly if needed, and you just transport them down to the fourth floor to their new room, where the nurses will assist them in pack or getting settled over there. And this is also the same when you're taking people out of the hospital. So you'd either transport people down to the drop off area or the pickup area where they have a family member waiting there for a car, and they will take them and they'll take them home, or you transfer them down to the parking lot where they have a car waiting, and uh, you wait with them until their car comes and or until the ballet comes with their car, so then they can get in with whoever they came with. Now, there's also transporting wheelchairs to different floors. Now, sometimes, usually we have like wheelchairs on the different floors just in case anyone needs one. Or sometimes there won't be any. So it's also patient transport's job to get wheelchairs down from the patient transport office, because there'll usually be a line of wheelchairs right outside the office, and you just bring up two wheelchairs to wherever you need to go or wherever they need to go. Uh, Generally, patient transport, in my opinion, I enjoy doing patient transport a lot more than being a floater. Now, what does a floater do? Now, patient transport only really consists of one thing. It's just patient transport. You just pick up the patient, you bring them down, you transfer them to different rooms, you take them to the parking lot, you take them to the drop off area, pick up. Now, when it comes to being a floater usually stays in the volunteer office, which is it's in the main building. Right under the it's the floor under the main entrance. It's not first floor. It's the bottom. I'm sorry. I didn't. It's been a few weeks since I've actually been, so I don't remember the name of the floor. But it's right. It's one floor under the entrance of the hospital. Now down there is where there you can be a floater. Now what a floater basically does is they sort through packages, and they'll put together like, oh, this mail goes to this person on this floor, like, oh, all this mail goes to one floor, and it is the floater's job to go up to that floor and deliver the mail to the to wherever the receptionist, to whoever's in charge of that floor who is asking for the mail. And it also depends on where you're working as well. There's different sections of the hospital where you can be a floater. There's the mail room where you just deliver packages, or there is the items or the storage where you'll be working and transporting stuff like different, like if someone needs, or a nurse is requesting more syringes, or it could be whatever. It could be napkins, it could be towels, it could be gloves, masks. If they're requesting those, then it is storage or the floater who is working at storage's job to get the item and take it up to whatever floor. So it's still the same, but in my opinion, I actually like doing storage more because it feels not, I want to say like it feels a lot more helpful, but it's just it, uh, I don't know. I just, me personally, as a preference, I like doing storage floating better. Now, the don'ts. When you work as a volunteer, there's a few don'ts, and they usually go over the guidelines, but I'm going to talk about the major don'ts. Like, this is the obvious don'ts. Not the obvious, but there's like the major don't do it. Like, out of all the other don'ts, these are the don'ts you don't want to do. Number one, don't take tips. Now, you're working as a volunteer, which means you don't get paid. And sometimes a patient, after you do patient transport or you deliver something, it mostly happens in the patient transport. Um, they'll want to give you money for your help. And that's very kind of them. But as a volunteer, we are not allowed to take tips from anyone. And even if they really want you to take it, you have to refuse, and you have to like kindly return the money if you can. Now, when you keep patient confidentiality, now keeping patient confidentiality is very important. You cannot go talking about, oh, this person or this person's name, because when you work in patient transport, on your on your pager, it'll tell you the person's name, the room number, and everything you need to know. And you'd usually like log that down on one of the forms that they give you. It is to keep track of who you transport and where they're going, and you write down all the info that it tells you on the pager, like their name, their birthday, their patient ID, and you would put that in a file, or the people take it later and they sort it all out just to make sure everything is indeed correct. And patient confidentiality means that if someone says like John Smith at this room, you can't just go talking to other people like, oh, John Smith at this room. Yeah, he has this, or he's in there because of that. That is very rude to the patient, and it violates patient confidentiality. And you can't go talking about it to like other people outside. And sure, they won't know. Like, sure, people won't know, but it'll get you in major trouble if people find out that you're talking about other patients, or talking about or telling about people's info. Like if you're like, oh, look at this, I'm gonna post it on Instagram or Snapchat, oh, on my story, and all that. That's breaking patient confidentiality, and that's one thing you never want to do. You never break patient confidentiality. Now, next is, please be respectful to the patient. Now, the whole idea, or like the whole thing they want you to do at volunteering at UCLA, is making sure that the patient is as comfortable as possible, like that they get the best experience there, the best service. And that's a major rule about it. Be respectful to the patient. You don't want to go prying into more than you need to know about the patient, or like about their condition, because sometimes that can be very it can be very like rude in a way. Yeah, it can be very rude, and it could maybe upset the patient or make them uncomfortable talking about what they're going through. And it's very important to be respectful and to respect their privacy, and not to pry too much into why they're there or anything else. The duration of the program, you complete your program when you complete or log in 100 hours of service there. And the hours spent there, that goes straight. You can ask for a sheet, and that'll go to your community service for high school. So that's another great thing about volunteering at UCLA. It's easy community service. Um, there's a minimum duration of period, so you at least have to be volunteering for 3 months and 50 hours. You cannot complete the 100 hours or finish your program before then. You have to complete at least 3 hours or 50 hours, and at the latest, you can complete. You can do 24 months. You can take 24 months at the least. So that's one entire year to actually work the program. That's the maximum amount, 24 months, and the minimum you have to do at least 3 months and 50 hours while working there. Now, my overall thoughts. Now, working as a volunteer, there's not really much to it. It's actually pretty straightforward. There's not really much to say about it. Now, my personal experience, I loved working there. I thought it was a great experience, and as someone who wants to go into the medical field, I feel that this is a step that everyone who's interested in being a nurse or wants to go into medical field, they should volunteer working at a hospital, because it's a great experience. It teaches you a little bit of professionalism working in a hospital, and you can see the atmosphere, and it's a good feel if you feel that that's right for you and that's what you really want to do. And there were some times where yeah, it was really tiring. I used to wake up really early in the morning to come to the hospital and start volunteering, and there were times when, like, oh, it's really quiet. There were a few times when, lots of times actually, you're gonna have a quiet day, so you only get like three calls in 6 hours, and that's very small. And then there's days where you'll be very busy, like it's call after another, and after another, and you'll have like 30 calls after 6 hours. It's a very like time fluctuating job. And if I really suggest that if you want to go into medicine or want to do anything like that, that you do some volunteering at a hospital, because it's a great experience. And I feel like me personally, I learned a lot being there. And my first day, I was incredibly nervous. They had me, like my first day experience, they had me go up through every floor. They had me familiarize myself with the hospital, familiar myself enough with the hospital to not get completely lost. Now, there were times when I got lost. There were times when it took me like 15 minutes to find what room I had to go to. And whenever I would be late to a room, to me personally, it felt like I kind of let them down, and it kind of urged me to do better. And with every time I was late, I tried my best to remember it and say, okay, I was late this time, I won't be late the next time. And it helps you kind of just get that worth ethic that is really needed today when you go working around. Yeah, that was my thoughts on being a UCA volunteer. It's a great experience. I recommend people do it. And the thing is, we don't really get much volunteers. Like when I was working there was only like 4 people in the room at the time, including me, in the patient transport office. And that means that's 4 people volunteering doing patient transport around the hospital. And I feel like we do need more volunteers to actually go. And with this whole COVID-19 epidemic, I feel like this is kind of just the great eye-opening experience to why we need more people helping in hospitals now, and like more people need to kind of step into the medical field, because without doctors, then we are in serious trouble. And when there's a lack of, then that means more doctors have to start working harder and then taking longer shifts. And it's very unfortunate. And I feel that more people should be going into the medical field. Um, that was my presentation on being a volunteer at UCLA. I hope you enjoyed or you found something interesting, and you learned something new. I hope you learned something new and you found something interesting, and I hope that you take an interest on going to volunteer at UCLA Health. Thank you.